ahead and start the recording. So the session is being recorded, and we'll go ahead and get going on this session. Um, Normally these sessions only run an hour or less. Pretty much I'm limited to that. We can run over a little bit if we need to on certain days, but that does affect my lunch. I've got these sessions for the 3 classes. I'm actually teaching 4 classes, but the fourth one is internship, so they don't have collaborate or discussions. But the other 3 classes do. And I've got these sessions at 10, 11, and 1 on Tuesdays. Um, I think for most of the semester, we'll pretty much meet at those times on Tuesday. I do know I'm going to have to do something the week of the 20th. Because I will be in Jacksonville, Florida for training all of that week, all day long. So I won't be able to do them during the day. So I'll have to reschedule them probably for in the evening, but I'll have to figure out what I'm going to do about that. How I'm going to handle that, or I may just have to cancel them. Y'all have to do discussion that week. We'll wait and see on that another week or two. That June the 20th also is a holiday, along with this coming Monday, May the 30th, and July the 4th. And June the 20th, I will be working all day because I will be in class all day that day down there in Jacksonville, Florida, after driving down there on Sunday. So I'm not getting a holiday that week because I'll actually work more than 40 hours that week and supposed to have a holiday in it and won't get that. The training I get in Texas and in Jacksonville is actually all paid for by the federal government through a grant to an organization in Texas. In Florida, I'll be learning about Python and using a GUI approach to it during that week. And then when I'm in Texas, I'll be learning about ways that I may be able to incorporate the Arduinos and the Raspberry Pis into classes also to teaching with. So this should be interesting on that. I will be out some other days during the semester because I do have some other things I'm involved in. So this will be an interesting short semester. It's only 8 weeks. Remember, Jermaine, you've been in these before, that you do have to post stuff in chat to get credit to not do the discussion. So basically at this point that you are in 24, and it's got to be more than that on it. Remember too, that you'll have to post something that is, you are in CIST 2412. You just should have finished chapters 1 and 2, which was installing Server 2016. Actually introduced it to you and then they had you install it. I gave you information on those installations. In chapter 2, they had you do the Hyper-V machine, and they led you through on that one. In chapter 3 and 4, which is what we're in this week, because we have 12 chapters to do in 8 weeks, so there are a number of weeks that we do have 2 chapters a week to do in. Chapter 3 is configuring and managing Server 2016, so it's going on and going in and setting up a number of the items to configure in it. Although in installing, you did do some configuring on it there, but they're going to teach you more and teach you some details on it in that chapter. In chapter 4, you're going through and looking at storage and file systems. So you're going to look at the different types of hard drives. And I'm using hard drives as the broad term, like it really is used out there in the world today. That can include solid state drives, which do not actually have a physical drive in them, but still are considered in the category of hard drive because they do the same thing. So they go through and do you a little bit of introduction on those, but realize the book is a little bit dated at this point now because it's a few years old. So solid state's not much mentioned in there. File systems, they talk about FAT, they talk about NTFS, and talk about a few others, but that's the main thing. They talk on those and about using those. So that's what you're going to do in those chapters. Are there any questions for me on the chapters? Because if y'all don't have questions for me, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over the stuff. The other part is I answer questions all the time via email when students write me, and I try to answer those every day of the week, not just Monday through Friday, but also try to normally answer on Saturday and Sunday. Occasionally there is a day that I don't. Not sure right off. Hold on a second. I think I can tell you. I'll tell you which ones definitely you should have. Because you definitely should have server DC1, which is your domain controller. You also should definitely have DM2, which is the machine where you're going to use server core in, which is where you're using CLI and no GUI. You also should have SA1, which is a standalone machine, which you're actually going to play some with in Chapter 3. And you should have DM1, which is another one you're going to connect to that domain controller. And then you will have, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you'll have a fifth machine, which will be the Hyper-V machine. And that one they had you do in Chapter 2, and they led you through in Chapter 2 on doing that one. So at this point, you should have 5 machines. Now, you're not going to run them all at one time. Just run the ones you need. DC1s, normally you're going to have to be running with other machines, except for SA1, and later on, it'll get attached to DC1 also. But, so you will run SA1 by itself at times. But if you're running DM1 or DM2, you need DC1 running also because they connect to that domain controller to the Active Directory. Let me see, I heard something else come in. And why is it not showing me chat messages? Oh, because it just changed itself to what it's showing me. It's determined it's going to show me the wrong one. There. So, some reason it kept wanting to try to go to me just seeing chats from moderators, and there is no moderators in here. It's just me. And that everyone should be showing me everything. So that took me a moment there. So that's where you're going with these. And then as you go further on along, so in Chapter 4, that's the starting of looking at your different type of storages that you'll use. And then Chapter 5, which is not this week, it's the next week, you'll go even deeper into that. When you get to Chapter 6 and 7, I'm going to tell you this one. Y'all, if I remember correctly, I have no assignments in 6 and 7. They'll be much easier chapters because they're teaching you about working with Hyper-V, and that is not very feasible now. Hyper-V basically is only used out there on doing on bare metal servers. They used to have a client version of Hyper-V, but they no longer have a client version of it, and they've moved it particularly to trying to do it with the cloud. And so getting that to work with it as far as a client version, which is what we're doing with VirtualBox, is very difficult. And then we get tossed up with some things about virtualization within virtualization on some of the machines too. So basically when it gets to the Hyper-V things, now you will use the server Hyper-V machine, the one you've named that. But when it comes to things that are working with Hyper-V, you're going to skip a lot of assignments. So in 6 and 7, we are going to skip a good bit of stuff. There may not be even in 6 and 7 any assignments. I have to look down and see. Correct. In 6 and 7, there are no assignments, but you do have to read through the chapters and study them. But you do have no activities to do in those 2 chapters. So be aware of that at this point, because it just does not work real well in the environment we're doing this in. And then, and I may start rearranging stuff in this class some to the way, Jermaine, weren't you in my class? Were you, didn't you take me last semester? What did you take me for? Because I seem to remember you being in class, but I can't remember what you were taking. So you were in 2601. So where I rearranged the stuff last semester in those classes and had everything based inside the chapter and didn't have a separate area for test, I have not done that yet in this class, but I'm probably going to start doing that in this one because I would like to get this one set up the same. And when I do these classes, I'm using what I taught with the last time to start from. So you may see how it's set up in there start changing some, but it's going to be in the way that you're familiar with. If I do that, like if I do that now, if I was to work on that this week, but I've got to get calendars fully set up. Also, I haven't looked at y'all's class, but I know in 1122 in the announcements, the announcement I put last night about where you can listen from, oh, it worked fine in y'all's class. Their announcement, I put it in there double inside the announcement, so I got to clean that out. But I'm going to try to start working on that some, but I got to get some other things done also in here. Now, have you got any questions for me about any other questions for me? Because I've answered one for you anyway about the class or the material that we're going through there in chapter 3 and 4. Because if there's not any real questions on it, there's not any reason for me to keep y'all in the session listening for no reason. The other part is I do answer emails, as you know, but someone who listens to this on the recording may not, because they may be a new student of mine. I do try to answer emails every day of the week. I can't promise always will, but if it's Monday through Friday, regular school days, almost always will. It may be later in the evening sometimes, because sometimes they keep me busy at work on some other things, and that I get involved in some things. If I'm not going to be answering emails on a work day, I normally will tell y'all that I will be offline because I'm dealing with some other type of thing. That will be going on. But I would try to answer every day, weekends and holidays also. So like this Monday will be a holiday. So things that would be due on Monday are actually in my classes due on Tuesday this coming week. Now, other weeks stuff is due on Monday. However, we do have 3 Monday holidays in this 8-week session. So there's 3 times stuff the due date will be extended by 1 day. That'll be Monday for Memorial Day, the 20th of June for Juneteenth, because that's a state holiday now, and then July the 4th for American Independence Day. All right, did you get them connected? I have had a couple of students write me that had problems on it, and all but one, I figured out what they had done wrong because they had their networks set up incorrectly. Either they had addressing done incorrectly, or they didn't set their devices correctly, because all of those internal network ones have to be set to with a name of INT net for the name of the network there in VirtualBox Manager. Because you are going to have the connections working correctly. The machines that are clients to in the domain do have to connect to the domain controller. So make sure you do have that. That also means whenever you go to run those machines that connect back to the domain controller, DC1 has to be running at that point or they're not connecting. So anytime you're using DM2, I think it is, now I'm going to get confused. one of those that is the server core. SA1 is the only one that really doesn't connect to the domain. So if you're running any of the other machines, DM2 will be connecting, but I don't think they initially had you connected to the domain. But DM1 they did, and Hyper-V connects to the domain also. And if you're running those machines, you have to have DC1 running. And even with DM2, when you go to connect it. So I would strongly urge is having DC1 running with DM2 also. SA1 is a standalone machine, so until they have you connected to the domain later in the course, nothing else has to be running with it. All right, any other questions? And if you run into a problem of them connecting on that, contact me and I will help you. Odds are I will be asking you what your settings are on your network adapters on each of the machines that you're trying to connect. Also be asking you for screen prints of the addresses that you have assigned to each of those machines, and you can do that through doing command prompt and doing IP config and get that information for me, and then screen print showing me what you've got in VirtualBox Manager so that I know what your network settings are there. And usually there's something set wrong there, because if the name of the network on one machine is one name and the name of the network on the other machine is a different name, guess what? They're on different networks, so they won't talk to each other. So, but they do work. I know it will work. We've been doing this for a good while, and they will work. But that's usually where students run into problems. I have seen another problem occur, but it's only been 1 or 2 students in all the years I've been teaching this server class. That when nothing else worked, that there is one other change that then solved it for a couple of students. But it's not the recommended way to do, but if I have to, I will. Okay. Any other questions? You said none at the moment. So next week we will meet at the same time. Hopefully some others will join in, but I'll try to get the recordings up tonight posted so that people will see them at that point. And so I'm going to go ahead and let you go. So if there's not stuff that we need to go over, I'm not going to make these sessions go longer than we need to make them go. So I'm going to stop the recording.